But we have other cases where the man is at home and still, after DNA test, we discover that the kids are not his. Welcome to this episode on Noble TV. Today we'll be looking at a very interesting topic because of the increase in need for DNA test by most families. There's been this increase, and the results most times have not been favorable to most of these families that requested for such DNA tests. We'll be looking at the rise and the causative factors and what we need to learn from it, and also what we need to know about some of these challenges. With me on set today to talk about this is our very good friend, Mr. Augustine Omilo. Mr. Augustine Omilo, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I just talked about the increase in the rate of DNA tests. Why do you think there's this increase in the rate of DNA tests in by most families trying to find out the paternity of a child or children, as the case may be?
Yes, I want to draw this into Africa particularly. It is as a result of the increasing rate of insincerity amongst Africans. Maybe if you want to make it to Nigerians.
It shouldn't be Africans, I don't think so, because I know the Western world also go for paternity tests.
Yes.
Go for DNA tests.
Yes. In Africa, we used to trust our spouses in the past. But modernization have come to distort some of our beliefs, and therefore we are now imitating the Western world. You know, in the past, if you wanted to get married, your parents would just ask you to get a woman who will be helping you to prepare food when you come back from work. They were not expecting women to go to the offices or kitchens. I mean, their primary assignment was to go to kitchen and prepare food. That was African concept. Now, but today, we are seeing women now who are competing with men. And therefore, because African culture permits polygamy, some women now see it as also as a gender challenge for them to imitate their husbands. After all, my husband is going. In fact, you see some men, you know, who are promiscuous. In the course of convincing women of the need for them to have them, they will ask them, you say you are married, meaning what? After what of your husband? He goes to Britain, he goes to Lagos and other places. You think he's just there? So in the course of convincing the women, okay, they realize that, well, after all, the man is also doing the same thing. And therefore, they want to do that. So that is a creeping of Western culture into our concept. In the past, even if your husband was away for 2 months, 3 months or something, you wait for him to come back. So that's why I want to bring it to Africans and the insincerity that is creeping into our culture. Our culture doesn't allow it, but modern civilization have allowed our culture, bringing women, gender equality, and all these stories about the women being equal to men, you know, to play in marriages.
It's okay. Thank you so much. I will take you on one of those things you said. You said before a man wants to get married, the dad would just bring somebody to help the person cook. We're like saying the place of the woman is in the kitchen.
Yes.
So you're trying to say is because the woman left the kitchen and went out looking for blue collar job or whatever. That's why, or we looked at this independence.
Yes.
We said that is why we have this increase in promiscuity. Is that what you're saying in essence?
Exactly.
But I don't think that is an excuse. Do you think that is an excuse because the woman has been given that liberty to go work? It's not an excuse for the woman to go into such act. Do you think it's an excuse?
Yes, it may appear not to be an excuse. But you see, women are human beings like men. Even if the woman is not even going out to work, for example, and the man is given to traveling for so long, leaving the woman at home. When there's an urge, I was discussing with Dr. Peters one day, and he told me that somebody, you know, I will not mention the person. He told him, he said, if you are feeling the urge to urinate, what do? Do you keep it to yourself? The answer is no. So you want to, by all means, go to urinate. If you want to pass physics and the urge is there, what do? Will you keep it to yourself? Say the answer is no. And the man will. So he said, if the urge for you to have sex becomes so strong, there's nothing you can do apart from having sex. Therefore, if a man, because of his schedule of duties, leaves home for too long, not bothering about the wife and all that, so when the wife now has the urge to have sex, for instance, yes, she may be try she will try to be disciplined so long as there is no opposing sex coming to her to suggest that she fulfills that obligation to have sex and be satisfied. So if there is a strong incursion into the marriage, convincing the woman about how to, so the woman will sometimes oblige, and that is where you have this problem. Now, you have men that are married, particularly young couples. You are married to a young woman, you live in Lagos, and no sooner you got married, you are transferred to Kaduna, and you no longer come home. You stay in Kaduna for maybe 2 years or something, leaving your wife that you just married. So sometimes you provide avenues for these women to misbehave, including men also. It's not about women all the time. It's about also men also misbehaving because of the gap between them and their wives.
Well, thank you so much for that explanation. Let me go back to that explanation. Let me just share some stories with us. There's a recent case of a man having worked for quite some time. He worked in the oil industry, having worked for some years, gave birth to 5 children, and he was sick. You understand? He was sick. They brought one of the child to help with blood, and they discovered that it was not a match. So it was at that point that the man had to DNA test. Ironically, 2 of the children don't belong to the man. He had to invite the other 3 to come in. They came in, and after test, they discovered that 2 of them also. So out of the 5 children, 4 were not the man's children. After training them all these years, and it was later discovered that 2 of the children belongs to the driver, and the other 2 belongs to the man's friend. You understand? I think that is just the scenario you paint me, because the man is mobile, always going from one place to another. But we have other cases where the man is at home, and still, after DNA test, we discover that the kids are not his. You understand? So I don't think it's only because the man or because the other party goes out. That is the reason. Sometimes some people can just be like, just be that. You understand? You understand? It's not a function of maybe the other person giving them room for that. You understand? So what I'm saying is this. I think there's this increase, and it's a challenge in most homes. I know most family would not want to go for DNA test because of what they might at the end of the day. And so they prefer to just stay the way they are. You are aware of the banker that killed himself and the wife and then killed the child because it was discovered that the child is not his, even after he spent so much in training the child. You understand? So what is your advice? How do we get out of this dilemma?
Yes, the major advice is for people to be disciplined. Now, because it is out of indiscipline that people go out for.
I like the word you use, discipline. I think that word is very, very important in a relationship.
Discipline. Because if a Catholic priest can do without having wife and sex, I'm not saying some of them don't be miserable. If somebody can on his own decide, a Catholic priest or all these people we call sisters can decide on their own not to have sex. Now, what is the challenge of a man or woman not having sex for 6 months or 1 year and is not bothered? You have to be disciplined. So that indiscipline trait in women and men.
Well, I like what you just said. Now, you talked about the Reverend Father or the Reverend Sister. You are aware of this case in Cross River, I think. The man that was killed by the wife and the wife's family. Because after they did a DNA test and discovered that the house help that was staying with them is the woman's child. And he did not tell the man. He just told the man he's bringing a house help. The man had discovered that the house help is the woman's child, that the woman was impregnated by Reverend Father and gave birth to that child. The child was with them at home before the woman had brought the child. So when the man started investigating, the man was killed. You understand? So it's not function of a Reverend Father or Reverend Sister, whatever. I think the right word you use is discipline. We have to be disciplined enough for us to conform ourselves. Despite, these challenges definitely will come. You understand? These challenges will come. You might have the urge, you might have the need, But if you can discipline yourself,
Yes.
bring your body under subjection,
Yes.
you understand, it's truly going to help.
Yes.
It's truly going to help.
Yes.
So you were trying to explain discipline. What other things do you think we need to do? What other things do you think both families need to take into cognizance?
Yes. The belief system in an environment. Say, for example, now, for the Christians, religion does not condone indiscipline in marriage. That is allowing a promiscuity in marriage. In many traditions also, the same thing applies. And therefore, even if you don't even believe what your Bible is telling you or your religion is telling you, you must have to believe what your tradition is telling you. Because in traditions, there are some persons, if you get involved in this kind of issues, it will affect your family one way or the other. Either the man dies or the children will become wayward or something happens. So you must at all times place yourself in a place of understanding of what your religion tells you and what your tradition tells you, or both. Even if you want to be involved in these matters, so when you remind yourself of what the Bible, if you're a Christian, for example, tells you, you want to refrain yourself because you don't want to endanger your children. Neither do you want to endanger your husband that you once loved so much, or vice versa. So that discipline that comes from realizing the fact that your religion or your tradition or both do not permit all these things will help families to grow.
Thank you so much. You talked about tradition. I think in some parts of Nigeria, let's say in Enugu, Nsukka speaking area, you understand, if the woman should involve herself in such, the woman might run mad, or the husband might die. Also, we have such tradition also in Abo, even the Robo speaking part of Delta
Even in
State.
Owaika,
Okay, you understand. So sometimes when they get involved, you have this instant judgment. The husband dies, the husband is sick, or the wife's, you understand. Some of these things happen. But most times when those people that are not from these areas, you understand, they involve in such. Another thing that also, when we talk about DNA tests, why do you think people go for DNA tests? I think it's a function of trust.
Yes, because
it's a function of trust.
Yes.
So what would you advise somebody that has that trust issue in his relationship?
Yes. The advice is if you are married, all the time, think about what attracted you to your spouse. Now, if you have that thing that attracted you to your spouse, first of all, you'll be able to now maintain the love relationship between two of you, and therefore there's no need for suspicion. Now, if you don't suspect yourself, why do you go for DNA? Because a child that is born into the world doesn't even know his father or her father, except the woman who most times knows the father. So if a child is growing up and nobody comes to challenge the mother or something, the child will naturally grow up to know that this is my father. Even when like if you bring up somebody now from your family, distant relations, a child, very young child, for example, and he or she is growing up, she doesn't even know who her father or his father is until after many years of growth. So in that case, the husband and the wife should trust themselves to the point where they no longer begin to suspect each other. And of course, in allowing your husband to trust you or your wife to trust you, you must be disciplined enough to maintain and ensure that trust lives beyond you, even at the point of death.
It's okay. So you talked about they should try and maintain that trust level. What if one of the parties is making it impossible for you to trust him or her? What do you do? Say, for instance, the woman is making it impossible for you to trust her. Do you advise we go for DNA tests? Or what is your advice? Do you advise we here, the Africans? Because in Anambra, for instance, you understand, or rather in the Igbo culture, you understand, whoever pays the dowry is the father of the child, you understand, even when he is not the biological father. So when they pay the dowry and the woman goes outside and gives birth, the husband still remains the owner of the child, you understand. So what do you advise when we have issue of trust? Do you advise people go for DNA tests, or they should forget about it?
No, once you trust yourselves, husband and wife trust yourself.
What if you don't trust yourself?
Yes, if you don't trust yourself, well, you can go for DNA. But the moment you go for DNA, in fact, as soon as you that thought comes to you that you want to go for DNA, you must also realize that at the end of the DNA, either the marriage continues or the marriage is terminated. Because either way, if you now go for DNA and discover that your wife, whom you trusted for a long time, now has the children who are not for you. I mean, as a human being, you may not want to continue in that relationship. And therefore, there must be a level of trust that even if it may not be right, but because you want to continue to believe in that your love for your wife or your husband, you just okay, let's continue because after all, these children didn't beg anybody to say this is where you are going to come from. So, because the DNA that you are doing, or however it is, you are actually endangering the lives of these children. Not because they didn't know who was going to be their children or their father or their mother. They just came and saw that they were or they are part of your family. So if you now do a DNA and the DNA says this child is not for me, it becomes a bastard, for example. And if a child grows with that
Perception,
yes, he doesn't have a father, and this was how my mother brought me up or something, it may psychologically impair the growth, financially or otherwise, of that child.
It's okay. Thank you very much. And also on the DNA, okay, let me ask you, is a DNA result always correct?
And that's another
Is
problem.
it a sign of infidelity on the part of the woman?
Yeah.
You know why I asked this question? I've been opportune to meet somebody, a midwife, that later resigned and was sharing testimony of how at the hospital where she worked, how they changed sets of children at birth. A family needs a man, needs a male child. The other family doesn't really need a male child, or they're not so desperate like this other family.
Yes.
So when they have a lot of births at such hospitals, that sometimes they swap these
Yes.
kids. So sometimes you might just be unlucky, your child is swapped at birth, and when the husband wants to do a DNA test and it's discovered that you are not he's not the father, definitely it's going to raise that issue of fidelity. You understand?
Yes.
It's going to raise that issue. So sometimes it might not be correct. It might not be correct. The woman might be responsible, might be disciplined, but sometimes when this result comes out, it raises a lot of questions.
Yes.
Sometimes we might not be able to explain them. So, Mr. Miller, one final word before we wrap up.
Yes, there should not be desperation in terms of who or the type of child you get, whether male or female. Because the picture you just painted now is as a result of desperation. The man wants to get a male child by all means, and therefore the woman may want to connive with doctors or nurses to ensure that she gets a female or male to satisfy the urge of the husband because she wants to remain in the marriage. Whether it's a male or it's a female, children are children. So there should be no desperation, and so you may not be driven into that web.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've listened to us talk about the increase in rate of DNA tests to verify the paternity of most of our children out there. We've listened to the advice from Mr. Milo. We advise as much as we can. Let's try and build trust in our relationship, because most of this challenge of paternity test is a function of trust. You try, build trust, try and build a relationship, be disciplined enough so that you won't fall victim to most of these challenges that we are having. We have a lot of stories to show people that DNA has wrecked their family, wrecked their life, and like Mr. Omilo Riley said, some of these children grow up with that perception of being a bastard. They don't know who their father is, and sometimes it affects them psychologically. So we encourage each and every one of us, let's try as much as we can to be disciplined. It's going to help us in our various relationships. From us at Noble TV, my name is Noble Arinze. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.